Hi again, fellow crafters. Apologies, it's been a little bit longer than expected to get this video out to you. Unfortunately, the after effects of the motorbike accident have taken their toll, and they did take me out of action for a little while, but trying to get back into it. Not a huge amount of preamble on this video. We're gonna dive straight into it. But if you do hear the odd noise in the background, it is getting into winter here. There's driving rain outside. We've got the fire going, we've got the heat transfer kit, so if anything sounds like a fan, that's what it is. So I have been allowed to go out shopping. The wife hates going shopping with me, especially when I start trolling the $2 shops, because I always start looking for things that are of use. Dragon, gotta have dragons. Another dragon. See what she has to put up with. Mind you, after years of having to go clothes shopping with her, it's about time that she had a taste of her own medicine. Now, these are protective corners, so you put them on furniture to stop them getting knocked. And I thought they would actually make reasonable sofas or furniture in a sci-fi game. So yeah, I got some of those. We actually needed one of those for one of our pieces of furniture. But yeah, twine, I'm going to need that. Pipe cleaners, apparently they've called them chenille sticks now. Guess you're not allowed to refer to that horrible thing. But this is what I am going to be using today. Now, this is a sushi mat, and I looked at this in the shop and I thought, oh, I wonder. And I thought, you know, I'm pretty sure I can make a couple of things out of this. So today is going to be an experiment. Let's get that unpacked. Now, by my reckoning, I can probably get a reasonable bridge out of that, and another reasonable bridge, and then with the offcut I might be able to make some palisade wall. So this is what we're going to be doing. Now, I have made rope bridges before. I'll show you a picture of that now. It was for a set piece. It wasn't as modular as I would like it, so this one I'm going to try and make it in a more modular style. The thing with the last one was it was quite time and labour intensive, and I thought there must be a faster, easier way of doing these, so that's what I'm going to try and do now. So I've got a block of wood because I want an elevated cutting surface. Okay, and I am, let's get those dragons out of the way, I am going to introduce you to another tool. Right, bring that into sight. Now, this is a rotary tool. Brand name that you'll probably be familiar with is Dremel. I will be perfectly honest, this is not one. This was a cheap one, bought from an electrical / hobby store called Dick Smith Electronics, which was based in Australia. They've actually gone bust now. I've had this one for about 15 years. I had one previously, and that one lasted me for about 7 years. I have tried some of the Dremel stuff, especially the bits, and I will be honest, I am not impressed. One of the bits that I tried for it essentially wrecked itself after about 5 minutes worth of use, and it was pretty expensive at the time. So buying off-brand stuff is not the worst idea, but if you are going to get one, make sure that you get one that has got this flexible attachment, because if you're just trying to use the machine and get into crevices to engrave or cut things, you know, it's a bit heavy-handed, it's a bit awkward to use. But with this attachment, it is just far easier. So what I have done is I have attached a cutting disc to it, and what I'm going to do is start trimming this through. Yes, you can use a craft knife or snips or something like that, but because I've got one of these, and we are sort of getting a little bit more advanced into the videos, then it's probably about time to start introducing you to more advanced tools. This one probably would be my second buy in terms of handy crafting tools after the hairdryer. Okay, hairdryer is always number one. So I will get on with cutting this. So now that I've got the first bit trimmed down, what I am going to do is get just some sellotape and get a piece like that, and I'm just going to use that and pop it as a guide on the other side, so that when I do this cut, I'm going to get it roughly the same kind of length. I'll crack on and make that cut now. Right, so there's the floor of the bridge made. That was easy. Pop that to one side. Okay, now what else are we going to be doing? Twine. Get this out of the bag. That is round about the right stuff that goes with that. So that is going to be our guide ropes at the top. So now all we need is some way of joining the two together, and that is where these chenille sticks, I'll use the proper term, come into it. Let's grab a couple of those out. Like so. Now, pros and cons. Pro, wire inside, and it is a bit fluffy. Con, it's too fluffy and it's the wrong colour. So we need to do something about that. What I am eventually going to be doing is cutting these into small sections, and then we can essentially just wrap the wire around both the top and bottom, and then we've got a nice flexible and sturdy, what looks like a joining rope between the two. So first things first is we need to recolour them. Now to do that we are going to use a mix of some cream paint, get that in there, reasonable blob, and some straight PVA. And this is part of the experiment. What I'm hoping is going to happen is that by mixing these two together and then doping those chenille sticks with it, it's going to take away the fluffiness while also recolouring it to something that is going to be a little bit closer to what the other twine is. Now, because this is nice and messy, I'll pop that down there. I'll get some on the brush and then just squeeze it around like that. Well, it's colorizing it, which is a good thing, but it is not necessarily getting it to sit down flat, which is what I was hoping for. Maybe if I just use my fingers and use it a little bit more neat. Is that going to do it? Yeah, I might be able to get away with it. Okay, I'll carry on doing these and get back to you. Right, so these have had a couple of days to dry now, and they are not what I expected, but that's fine because I did say that this was going to be an experiment. Now, I'll just bring that up to the camera. You can see how it's very fluffy. I think that's because the nylon has its own sort of stiffness to it. I was expecting it to lie more flat, but to be perfectly honest, I am not disappointed with the result. But what it does mean is that there is going to be a change of plan. Now, originally, for the top sort of guide rope that you would hold on to on a bridge, I was going to use this, but instead, just so that I've got consistency, I'm actually going to use these instead. So these were originally going to be sort of like the upright parts where the bridge suspends from the handrail, and I'm still going to use these for that, but I've got some extras and I'm also going to use these just for consistency so that the ropes look the same for the handrails as well. And as you can see, I'll just get those wobbly bits out of the way. As you can see, there is enough length there to be able to get away with that. So what I'm doing, I am reserving 2 of those for the handrails, and then the others I am going to cut into 30cm strips. So I will get on with that and be back in a few seconds. Sorry, I meant to say 30mm, not 30cm. So these are the uprights that have been cut out. Next thing to do is go about 5mm in and then just bend the wire on it at a 90-degree angle like that, and then like that. Okay, so you're left with sort of like let's see if I can get that at the right camera angle, a staple shape like that. I will do that with all of these and then show you how to attach them. So I've got all of my uprights bent into a nice staple shape. Now I'm going to attach them to the bridge. One thing to remember, do not attach them at the very end, because we're going to be putting an upright pole there the way that you would normally have the handrail tied off on a pole, just to give it that height, and then it comes down to the ground for tension. Okay, so starting from the middle, all you do, where's the middle? About there. You can slide that wire in between, get in there, slide the wire in between some of the bamboo skewers, and you can see it sits there quite happily. Make sure the bottom part of the staple is under the string. You want it close up because that rope is essentially all the structure to it. Okay, And once we've got all of them in place, we're just going to put a dab of super glue to hold them all the way along. I'll get that done and we'll move on to the glue stage. So we've got all the uprights in place, and obviously because they've got that wire core to them, they are standing up quite nicely, which is exactly what we want. One thing I should have mentioned, because of the way that these chenille sticks are made, you can, once you've applied the glue, sometimes get sort of like a downward angle, kind of like a fir tree, the way the branches lay on a fir tree. So if you have sort of like a downward droop to the fluffiness, make sure that it's pointing towards the road section, okay? You don't want them standing up, that would look silly. So pop this upside down, and then we are just going to secure these in place with a drop of super glue. There we go. We'll leave that to dry for a few minutes and then we'll attach the handrails. Right, so we've got all the uprights glued in place. Now time to add the handrails. Don't know whether or not you're aware of this trick, but if you've got any kind of wire and it needs straightening, the easiest way to do it is not to actually try and sort of straighten each and every little kink. You basically just take it by the ends and you pull it like that, okay, and that pretty much gets it straight. So what we're going to do now is hook this under like that, and then we just crimp those top parts down using a pair of needle nose pliers. And I will get this done and we'll move on to the next stage. So we've got the handrails in place, and as you can see it's actually quite rigid because it's got that wire core, okay, but there is still some flex to it depending on where you want to attach things on your terrain. Now, final thing is just to pretty it up a little bit to get it looking more like your traditional rope bridge. So what I'm going to do, I've got a bamboo skewer here. We're going to cut some uprights just for the edges there and attach them, and then we'll trim the excess from these chenille sticks and use this final one just to add some guide ropes down to the ground. So now you want your height probably to be a little bit bigger, so clippers rather than pliers, like that. That, and then so that each one kind of fits in a slot between those bridge, I'm just going to snip a V shape in the end like that, and we'll glue that in place. I'll get on with that and show you what it looks like once I'm done. So I've got my upright bamboos in place, and to hold them in place I've taken the ends of the handrail and I've just wrapped it around the top, and as you can see it's pretty sturdy there, and I'm just going to reinforce it with a dab of super glue down at the base. Let that dry for just a few seconds, and then we'll snip these off. In fact, while that's doing, let's get some lengths of this for the guide ropes at the bottom. Yep, seems stable. So last little bit. So they're all trimmed off. What I have done, some of the original offcuts of the ends of the sushi rolling mat where I trimmed it down to size, I've just grabbed them, and they are going to be stakes in the ground. And we've got the sections of chenille stick, as they're called now, and they are going to make, I'll get it at a better angle, guide ropes down like that. So again, we just get needle nose pliers, and I'm going to make a hook in the bottom, and the pegs will go into that, and then a loop at the top, so that can fit on there like that. Give it a good crimp. Pop the peg in place. And crimp that. And that is what it will look like once it's all finished. I'll get the others done. I'll reinforce it with a little bit of glue. I'm going to use watered down PVA just for the ropes, and just to properly join the upright ropes to the handrail correctly, and then this can be added to a couple of pieces of terrain. I'll show you what that looks like at the end. Right, on to the next terrain piece in this batch. We're going to make some palisade wall. Now, what I want is an end piece. I want that string in there, because that is going to be the binding that you would normally get at the top of a palisade wall. This is going to be the base of it, which would be sunk into the ground. So I'm going to trim just a little bit off the top of that single line there, so it's back to the cutter. Now I've actually stopped cutting at this point because I have found out where I had actually thought that all of this cord was glued all the way along the mat. It is actually only glued at the very edges. So as I started cutting these in a single, sort of like just with the one piece of cord connecting them, it actually started unraveling. So what I've done is I've stopped, I've got it back in place, and I'm going to reinforce the bottom while I cut with, where's my knife gone, there it is, with a piece of tape on both sides, and then that should hold it in place while I continue with the rest of the cut. Just like that. Okay, back to the cutting. So I've now got the length of palisade cut out. Before we do anything else, at this point what I'm going to do is sharpen the top sections into the classic sort of spike shape. I'm going to do it now rather than towards the end, because by the time we've got this attached to something, it's going to make it more difficult. So, craft knife, and we're just trimming a notch off all of those. I will go on and get this done, and you'll see the finished results. So we've got the edge, or sorry, the top pointy bits done. Now, going back to the name of the channel, Minimalist, properly they would be done both sides and back to create sort of like a pyramid point, but rather than doing the front and back edge, I've just done those sides just so that you get the impression of the fact that it's a spike, okay? Because at a glance you're going to know what it is. Next, palisades come with an earth bank, so just a piece of scrap polystyrene, and that's about the length. I'm not going to bother with the hot knife. Just use a craft knife and then get that to the right length there. And this really is just scrap, okay? I'm not sure what else I could have used it for. And I don't mind the fact that it is uneven, because let's face it, it's an earth bank and it doesn't have to be even. So what I'm now going to do, now that I've got one facing side, I'll use my knife and I'll slope the back, and we'll take it from there. Right, now for this piece, one thing that I'm going to do slightly differently when it comes to polystyrene terrain is actually put an underbase on it. Now the reason I want to do that is because when you sink the palisades in to an earth bank, you've obviously got the dirt and rocks in front of it, so we just need something thin so we can get that little bit of extra detail just on the front. So I'll put this so that there's just a little bit of overhang, just so we can get that extra piece of terrain, and then that glues on that glues on both of them, and we start adding dirt and things like that. I'll get cutting. So it has all been put together. What have we got? So underneath, as I say, there's the strip of card which is acting as a base. Polystyrene's been glued to it. The palisade wall has been glued to it. Now I got rid of most of the tape, but I did leave a very thin strip just so that I could make sure that that section stayed together and didn't start unraveling. Maybe next time I could try putting a thin run of watered down PVA to soak into that. I'm not sure. The thin strip of tape does seem as if it worked out fine. Okay, and that has been glued up flush to the polystyrene, and we've got a number 2 blend on the front, and on the walkway at the back we've just got straight sand, because obviously your soldiers are going to patrol that area and the grass is going to have been worn away just to leave bare dirt. So the only thing to do now is to get a paint job on that, add some flocking, because obviously this palisade wall has been here for a little while and the grass has grown back on it. After I've done that, I'll show you the finished piece. Well, I did say that this was going to be an experiment, and as experiments go, I am really pleased with the results. Rule number 1, when you're out and about, whether or not you're browsing through shops or just walking around, have a look around and see what can be used as a material in your crafting. Can this thing be a building or a structure, or a material that I use that can be something completely different, or it's just an interesting shape and you want to include it? At the end of the day, this used to be a sushi mat. Rule number 2, when you are experimenting, go with the flow. Yes, you will have an image of what you want to create in your mind. It doesn't necessarily work out like that, but you do have the nous and the skills to work the problem and get it into something that is usable. Take the bridge, okay? The rope, when I imagined it far more flat, far less fluffy. As it turned out, as you saw in the video, we changed part way through to accommodate the fact that things were not going according to plan. And as it turns out, it's a perfectly acceptable piece as far as I'm concerned. You glance at it and you say, there's a rope bridge. Okay. Does it have the fine rope that you see on other people's master builds or on my original rope bridge? No, it doesn't. However, it still looks like a rope bridge, and due to the fact that we had to change the build slightly to work around the problem that was presented to us, it actually has far more structural integrity because we've actually used something with a wire core to it. Okay, and I actually did test this. Strung between the two mountain pieces that you saw, it will take the weight of a metal miniature without sagging. Okay, there is structural integrity to this piece. Not a huge amount, I wouldn't put a whole army on here. If you are going to do something like that, then I would recommend that just at the very ends, just on that last gap between the floor planking, just get a pin, okay, or a couple of pins. Slide it in so that only the very top metal part is showing. Stick it right at the edge so that it's being obscured by the upright, and a pin prick into another polystyrene piece of terrain is not going to be noticeable. This is modular, okay? Unlike the other rope bridge that I built, which is a static piece, this is modular, okay? Put it between hills, put it between mountains, put it between buildings in a dystopian future that have been overrun with vegetation. Why not? Okay? It didn't go according to plan, but it is a perfectly functional piece of terrain and I am more than happy with it. However, the one that I'm really happy with is this one. Okay, this one exceeded my expectations. Again, there was a problem in the build and we worked through the problem. You cannot tell that there is a piece of tape reinforcing the bottom section and stopping the palisade poles from unravelling. And the fact that I used scrap so that the back is sort of uneven, okay, and has been it just adds to it. I am really stoked with that. This is a piece that in future I am going to be revisiting. I'm going to be adding to this collection because at some stage I've got to show you how to make gates, so why not? I'll make another piece and then we'll have a gateway in between and do some corner sections and things like that. for what is a very primitive fortification, I'm really happy with this. Probably the longest single part of the build was just trimming the tops to get the spikes, and originally I wasn't going to do that, but it has certainly been well worth it. I would say probably about 3/4 of an hour build time, maybe 3/4 of an hour paint, okay, plus drying time. Call that one a half-hour build, and of course if you're doing them in a batch, it's not going to be that long. This one, including drying time, I would estimate as being about a 2-hour build. Can't say fairer than that. It is of course now time to say goodbye for this video. Please do hit the like and subscribe, etc., notification bells, all that social media stuff. And again, my apologies for taking so long to get this one out. As you can hear, my health is not necessarily the best at the moment, but there is another one on the way, and we're going to be leaving the medieval or fantasy stuff alone for at least one video and doing something a bit different. Until then,